I mean, honestly, the way that I get into a character is through their style. So it was more about who Lily is that was so fascinating to me.
People care so much more about your personal life than they do your work. And if you aren't open with your personal life, then they just make it up for you and share it for you.
Blake Lively was once hailed as Hollywood's golden star, admired for her charm, elegance, and the kind of approachable glamour that made her feel both iconic and relatable. For years, she cultivated an image that blended sophistication with authenticity, a persona fans could celebrate while still imagining her as one of us. But as time went on, the glossy picture began to show fractures. What started as quiet speculation soon swelled into a storm. Her much-hyped film It Ends With Us quickly unraveled behind the scenes, plagued by infighting, exposed messages, and a wave of allegations that stripped away the controlled narrative she had long maintained. Each revelation pulled viewers deeper into the reality of how much of Hollywood depends on illusion and precision-crafted branding. The real shock, however, came when her own legal team's maneuvers appeared to backfire, revealing just how fragile that carefully built image had become. What emerged was not only the unraveling of a star's reputation, but also a harsh reminder of the ruthless, unpredictable forces shaping an industry that thrives on power plays, manipulation, and storylines that can collapse in an instant.
We're honored that because, what we're talking about is so important and so meaningful, that we're able to have this much anticipation, and so many people want to go see it and are talking about it.
It Ends With Us was marketed as the kind of project Hollywood dreams are built on, a beloved novel with a massive following, almost guaranteed to deliver box office gold and critical acclaim. Justin Baldoni, known for his heartfelt storytelling and polished reputation, took the reins not just as director, but also as co-writer and co-star. Opposite him, Blake Lively's casting was announced with fanfare, positioned as the perfect move to elevate the film's profile and draw audiences in. On paper, their collaboration looked unstoppable. Justin's earnest artistic vision paired with Blake's glamour, star power, and undeniable influence. The early rollout only reinforced this perception. Press junkets and red carpet interviews painted a picture of creative harmony. Smiles looked effortless, answers felt rehearsed but convincing, and headlines framed them as partners united in purpose. But the shine didn't last long. Beneath the surface, subtle signs of strain began to surface. Reports trickled out suggesting that Blake felt increasingly sidelined by Justin's multi-layered role. Sources close to production claimed she resented his heavy hand in shaping the narrative, believing her own ideas were being diminished or ignored. Meanwhile, Justin's public image, carefully nurtured through press and social media, seemed to highlight his leadership while casting her as secondary to the project's success. At first, these tensions were little more than whispered complaints from behind the scenes. Yet soon, leaks, planted stories, and subtle press cues began exposing the growing rift. Fans who once saw seamless chemistry now picked up on clipped responses, frosty exchanges, and strained interviews. What had been pitched as a passion project born of collaboration gradually transformed into a public spectacle, with audiences watching closely as a private power struggle spilled into the open, turning a dream adaptation into another chapter in Hollywood's ongoing saga of ego, control, and fractured alliances.
That ended up actually getting picked up and doing very well, and I was one of two people maybe, and then I get a call from my manager and my agent, and they were both on the line, which means it's something serious. Right. Either you got the job or there's something wrong. Yeah. And they said, so you were the choice, but the network said that your eyebrows would be too distracting.
Oh, what?
Oh no.
And then they went like, so what can we do about that?
As tensions on set intensified, the friction between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni could no longer be brushed aside. In a decisive and very public move, Blake went on the offensive. She positioned herself as the victim of a deliberate campaign meant to destroy her reputation. According to her account, Justin wasn't just a co-star or a director, he was the architect of a smear strategy designed to undermine her credibility and tighten his control over the project. She argued that jealousy, ego, or the hunger to dominate the narrative had driven him to leak damaging stories and manipulate the press against her. In Hollywood, where reputation is currency and power struggles are constant, her claims weren't immediately dismissed. If anything, they struck a familiar chord. Industry insiders and many in the public recognized the pattern. Women who challenge authority, especially male authority, often find themselves targeted, discredited, and pushed aside. For some, Blake's accusations felt like yet another chapter in that ongoing story. Sympathy gathered around her as audiences viewed her through the lens of history, placing her alongside countless women who had been strategically silenced or vilified in the entertainment world. The framing was powerful. Blake as the embattled heroine, Justin as the manipulative force pulling the strings. But that surge of support proved short-lived. The narrative collapsed under the weight of something more devastating evidence. Hard, documented proof began surfacing, in the form of texts, emails, and records that challenged her account. This wasn't speculation or gossip, it was tangible material that forced a painful re-examination of the story. Instead of confirming her claims, the evidence complicated them. It suggested a murkier reality, one where blame was not so clearly defined, and where Blake's role in the conflict wasn't as passive as she had portrayed. The lines between aggressor and victim blurred, dismantling the clean, sympathetic image she had carefully presented. In a single blow, her version of events began to unravel, leaving behind a fractured reality, one that exposed just how messy and volatile the battle behind It Ends With Us had truly become.
I internalized that as opportunity. We had such a responsibility to this audience to deliver something and to have the opportunity to deliver something for a passionate group of people.
Yes.
As someone who is so deeply passionate myself, I was so excited about that. I would so much rather have that than people who are indifferent.
The storyline Blake Lively had carefully crafted of being the silenced actress caught in a smear campaign began unraveling with breathtaking speed once a new wave of evidence surfaced. Screenshots, allegedly drawn from private text exchanges, started making the rounds in Hollywood before inevitably spilling into the public eye. Sources suggested the leaks came from individuals tied directly to Justin Baldoni's production circle, and what they revealed was not the picture Blake had painted. Rather than supporting her claim of being sidelined and victimized, the messages suggested the opposite. That Blake was the dominant force on set, exercising near-total control over It Ends With Us. The texts painted her as a figure whose influence extended far beyond performance, dictating creative decisions, press strategies, and even personnel dynamics. It was a jarring contrast to the approachable, down-to-earth image she projected to fans. The leaks repeatedly referenced a cryptic term, her dragons, a phrase Blake allegedly used to describe her circle of powerful allies. That inner circle appeared to include her husband, Ryan Reynolds, along with other unnamed but clearly high-profile figures in Hollywood. Within message after message, she implied that if her demands were resisted, these dragons could be unleashed to apply pressure on editing, marketing, publicity, and even media coverage. The tone of the texts was striking. They contained veiled threats, blunt ultimatums, and pointed reminders of the reach of her connections. Her influence was framed not as collaboration, but as control, a determination to bend the project toward her personal vision, even at the expense of creative integrity or the well-being of colleagues. Once these records began circulating, the narrative shifted almost overnight. Sympathy drained as fast as it had been built, replaced by a harsher picture, not of a star being torn down, but of one accused of wielding her power to intimidate, manipulate, and dominate. For Hollywood insiders and fans alike, the revelations hit like a shockwave. Blake's carefully polished image cracked wide open, replaced by a portrait of someone willing to weaponize influence to secure her place at the top. The scandal didn't just stain her reputation, it forced a re-evaluation of the stories she had been telling for months, leaving both the industry and the public unsettled by how quickly the illusion of authenticity can collapse once the truth starts leaking through.
And being frank, if it were not for women giving me direct feedback in my own personal life and being a man who was willing to at least listen to them, there's no chance that I would be having this conversation. So the message, to answer your question, the message is very simple. As men, we need to embrace all of the parts of us that make us human. That's it.
The turmoil surrounding It Ends With Us reached a breaking point when Blake Lively, determined to regain control of a collapsing narrative, escalated the feud into the courtroom. She filed a lawsuit against the production, framing herself once again as the victim of a hostile environment. In her complaint, She alleged that the set lacked proper safeguards for intimate scenes and went further, accusing director Justin Baldoni of unprofessional conduct, including making disparaging remarks about her post-pregnancy appearance. To reinforce her position, Blake's legal team unveiled a curated selection of text messages. These excerpts, presented as key evidence, were designed to bolster her claims, messages highlighting her discomfort and portraying Justin as dismissive, domineering, and insensitive. At first glance, the documents seemed damaging, a paper trail aligning neatly with her accusations, but the illusion quickly fell apart. Forensic review and follow-up reporting revealed that the so-called evidence had been heavily altered. Messages were spliced out of order, crucial context was omitted, and even emojis were stripped away, changing the tone of exchanges entirely. What was presented as clear proof turned out to be a distorted reconstruction, engineered to make Blake appear vulnerable and Justin predatory. Justin's legal team wasted little time in striking back. They released the complete, unedited chain of conversations in full chronological order. The contrast was stark. Where Blake's version painted a story of harassment and intimidation, the unredacted record showed a far more balanced, even at times cordial, interaction. The very foundation of her legal argument crumbled as the public saw how selectively she had framed the evidence. By choosing transparency, Justin's camp not only dismantled her case in court but also eroded her standing in the court of public opinion. The exposure of doctored evidence cast a shadow over Blake's credibility, leaving observers to question not just the lawsuit, but the entire narrative she had been pushing for months. What began as an offensive legal maneuver to reclaim control ended up backfiring dramatically, deepening doubts about her motives and raising new questions about where the truth in this Hollywood standoff truly lies.
It's like just tracking him down, and then I finally got to read the script, and the script was a thriller. So that was a little confusing to me because he's like such a funny director.
Yeah.
And so I said, you know, what is this? Because the script is definitely like a twisting, turning, intense thriller. Is it a comedy or a thriller? And he said, yes. So then every day on set, I was like, is today a comedy or is it a thriller?
It's a good mix
and
of
it's
both.
like, yeah, it's like really kind of over the top and campy and trashy and fun and like, you know, kind of like.
When the full, unredacted text messages were finally laid out in chronological order, Blake Lively's version of events began to collapse in real time. The very evidence she had once leaned on became the proof that dismantled her credibility. Key claims she had made in court, and repeated to the public, were not only contradicted but shown to be fabrications. One of the most damning moments involved her sworn allegation that Justin Baldoni had barged uninvited into her trailer while she was in a state of undress, an accusation framed as a gross violation of her privacy and personal dignity. On the surface, it was a powerful charge. But the text record told another story. In black and white, it showed Blake herself had invited Justin into the trailer, even joking with him in messages moments before his arrival. What she had described as an act of intrusion was, in reality, an encounter she had orchestrated. The revelation didn't just weaken her case, it obliterated it. What had been framed as a serious violation now stood as clear evidence of misrepresentation, raising the specter of perjury. And once that cornerstone allegation fell apart, so too did the broader structure of her narrative. Every other accusation she had made was suddenly viewed through a lens of doubt. Bit by bit, the carefully staged image of victimhood crumbled under the weight of verifiable truth. Then came the blow no one expected. Blake's longtime attorney, one of the most respected legal figures in Hollywood, abruptly withdrew from the case. Attorney-client splits are not unusual in entertainment law, but the manner of this departure stunned the industry. Instead of exiting quietly, the lawyer issued a rare public statement, a direct repudiation of Blake's credibility. They expressed serious ethical concerns, making it clear they could not continue representing a client whose claims were fundamentally at odds with the documented evidence. It was a moment of extraordinary gravity. A lawyer known for discretion and integrity had effectively declared their own client's case indefensible. The statement sent shockwaves through Hollywood, not just because of its substance but because of its symbolism. If even her most trusted advocate could no longer stand beside her, what did that say about the truth of her story? The effect was devastating. Whatever sympathy Blake had left evaporated. In the eyes of many, she was no longer the wronged actress fighting against manipulation, but a figure exposed by her own contradictions and undone by the very evidence she tried to control.